afternoon, beautiful people. My name is Hope, and welcome to Let's Talk About Sex. This is episode 7 of Healthcare Unlocked. Today's topic is one you don't want to miss. We're going to be going into healing, pleasure, and communication in the bedroom. What does that mean? That this is an all inclusive conversation, whether you're solo, partnered, healing from past experiences. This space is for you. So let's keep it real, let's keep it respectful, and maybe a little risque within reason, and all in the name of growth and self-love. We want this conversation to be truly impactful and apply to everyone. I'm thrilled to be joined by the queen of the world of sex positive therapy, Miss Erin Cadet. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thank
How
you.
are you?
I'm well. I'm well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. As she said, I'm Erin Cadet. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of New York. I'm based out of Brooklyn. I offer virtual and in person sessions, primarily virtual though. And I specialize in just that sex therapy, um, tackling any host of topics from sexuality, gender, non monogamy, sexual health issues, and relationship issues.
So you're going to spill the tea on all of this for us, right? All right,
Yeah.
everybody just sip your imaginary tea and let's get into it. So I want to start with the icebreaker just to ease you into the conversation, Erin. And I'd like to know, what was the one thing that you wish you were taught about sex when you were growing up?
Uh, I think I would say I wish I was taught that it's pleasurable and that it's something that you can do in an appropriate context. I feel like so many people, the messaging I got was um, don't have sex, and those boys will say anything to you to get it. And that was the messaging. And then that was the messaging for my mother. And the messaging in school was just the nuts and bolts of uh, uh, sperm and egg and that, but never anything about what this actually looks like in a committed relationship, or what this looks like for my own pleasure.
Do you think that's what causes a lot of miscommunication in relationships today? It's because we weren't taught how to navigate beyond abstinence or beyond that.
Absolutely. I think that that is a significant problem because um, people are often not taught about sex like from reputable sources, as in the parents might give them a book, they might not talk with them at all, they might say what my mother said,
Mhm.
um, but there's no real conversation about like this is how this actually works. So people are finding out by trial and error. So like trial and error means that there's going to be a lot of errors.
Really? I think it's important to know that many people think sex therapy is only available for people who have an issue, and not as a foundation for a healthy relationship or a healthy lifestyle. So that's really interesting. I'd like to know from the people out there in the audience, what do you think of when you first hear the term sex therapy? What comes to mind? Feel free to drop an emoji or comment in the chat and let me know, and let's open up this conversation. Um, Prior to you becoming a licensed professional, what did you think about when you heard the term sex therapy, Erin?
Um, mm, like for a long time, I didn't even know it existed. I actually had gone to my OBGYN because I was having sexual issues, and like she didn't have anything for me. She was like, oh, like at that time I was having trouble having an orgasm. My doctor really didn't have anything for me. She was like, oh, well, maybe if you're, with your partner longer and you grow more comfortable, like that issue might shift. But if it doesn't, then I can recommend a sex therapist. That's where I first found out what sex therapists even existed.
Hmm.
And from that point on, I started doing my own research about it. And I was like, oh, I think this is what I want to do. So, like, when I first heard sex therapist, I was like, like brain just exploded.
Yeah. So now we know it's sex therapy is more than just corrective. It's about embracing the sexy side, embracing the safeness of it, having a safe space, even if it's with your own company, and soul nourishing, right?
Yeah.
I really think so. Wow. So, okay, I have a question. I want to do a little myth buster because let's see how well people out there are knowledgeable about sex therapy. Let's play myth or fact, and you guys can type your answer in the comments and let us know. Sex therapy is only for couples. Drop your responses. I'll tell you, I never thought sex therapy was for couples. I always thought it was a corrective process needed for someone who had a misunderstanding or an abuse of sexual, um, relations. So in my mind, prior to being educated, I always thought sex therapy was for someone who was addicted to sex or someone who was possibly deemed a sex offender, and this is something that they had to do. Now we know differently because of people like you spreading the knowledge in the community. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So, let's go into the other myth. Only people with trauma need sex therapy. I think I kind of just gave a little hint on the answer, but guys, answer for me and let me know what you think. And the last one is sex therapy means talking about sex the whole time. I want to know if you think that's what the sex therapy means, because I think if you talk about sex the whole time, it's beyond just that. So please answer what are myths. Sex therapy is only for couples, only people with trauma need sex therapy, and sex therapy means talking about sex the whole time. Erin, what do you have to say about the myths or how do
Um,
you debunk them?
well, first I would say sex therapy is not just for couples, so that would be false. I'm trying to think, what was the second one?
Only people with trauma need sex therapy.
Also false. Sex therapy is for anyone, really. Like, it can be for individuals, it can be for couples, it can be for thruples. Like, you don't even have to be in a relationship to go to sex therapy. Um, People come to me for a whole host of issues. Um, like I said, sexuality, like gender. Um, Sometimes it is sexual health, um, and sometimes it is non monogamy or more relational focused. In terms of like trauma, that's also not necessarily the case. Um, some people, come for trauma, and sometimes trauma can impact what someone is navigating from a sexual standpoint, but it's not necessarily something that is an absolute when it comes to um, being in sex therapy. And then the third one, what was the third one?
The third one was I have to go back. Sex therapy means talking about sex the whole time.
Oh, absolutely not. Um, 9 times out of 10, we're talking about a whole host of other things um, that for some people they think it's not about sex, but in reality, it goes back to their relationship with physical intimacy. Because a lot of time we are getting into trauma. A lot of times we are getting into their experiences in childhood. A lot of times we are getting into the messaging that they received throughout their life about sex.
So I want to go back to a point that you made earlier when I asked you about your experience in talking about sex at a young age or being taught about sex. And you said that your mom basically gave you the abstinence speech and the kind of vilification of boys. And your doctor basically said, well, I'm going to throw you off to a sex therapist. So, with that being said, educate us on what the current trend is out there in the world now. Are adolescents being offered sex therapy in school? I know that growing up, we had sex education classes and it was more on the physical aspect of things, but is sex therapy being offered in schools now for adolescent, or do you believe it should be offered? And should that conversation be opened up at a younger age?
I because I don't work with adolescents, I don't work with.
Okay.
I have no idea what's happening in terms of sex education there.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of should kids have sex therapy? Um, from what I've seen, again, like I'm on listservs that are specifically geared towards people who are in like sexual health and wellness. So I do see like emails coming in where younger people, adolescents, they're looking for therapists to work with those kids um, who are navigating being trans, who are navigating being non binary, who need a family therapist, who need individual therapy. So, they're so that does seem to be happening in terms of like, do I think that kids should have sex therapy? Like, I don't even think about it through the lens of should children have sex therapy. I think that they should have like adequate sex education. And I think if they had adequate sex education, I think that would mitigate like some of the issues that come up that people end up coming to me with.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. So I want to pivot a little bit into a different realm and talk about desire. And I think a lot of people are afraid to express their sexual desires for fear of being ostracized. So, what blocks desire and how do you help people navigate through that?
Um, any number of things can impact desire, whether it be stress. That's a big one. Um, whether it be mismatched sexual compatibility, and when I say mismatched sexual compatibility, like if one partner has a higher sex drive than the other, and if they are kind of constantly like um, approaching their other partner for sex, sometimes that can minimize the other person's desire for sex because they feel like they are always being bombarded um, to engage with sexual activity. Um, Other things, factors that can decrease desire, perimenopause and menopause. Like those are little hot button words right now. And yes, they can have an impact on one's sexual desire. And also connection. Like people, if they're not feeling connected to a partner at that particular moment, or they don't feel a connection to the person at all or anymore, that can also impact desire.
Well, I love
So,
that you mentioned connection and being connected with a person. Have you ever felt emotionally disconnected someone but still felt obligated to satisfy them in, a physical manner? And if so, what prompted you and how do we navigate getting our feelings across that, we don't have the desire to connect with someone sexually because there's an emotional disconnect? How do we explain that to our partners?
um, I've never felt like I needed to engage in sexual activity to make my partner feel good. Like, I just never do that. Because,
Mhm.
no. Uh,
Right.
but what I
Boundaries.
wonder is, like, now, have I in maybe a partner has approached me for sex and then I wasn't in the mood initially? Sure. But I often think too, like sex doesn't always have to be about, oh, you have a desire to have sex right now. Sometimes it's, do I have an openness? Do I have a willingness? I kind of think about it as like a buffet, if you will, of like, when they have the little charcuterie board out and like, they have some fruits and everything on there. And I think about sex like that, as in like, I mean, yeah, you put the charcuterie board out. I mean, I'll have some strawberries, but
Right.
I may not necessarily be feeling like I'm ravenously hungry right at that moment. And so I think that there has to be like an openness to it, that can also, that can lead you towards desire. That can lead you towards wanting to engage with it. But it doesn't, desire doesn't necessarily have to be right out of the gate there for someone to engage with sex.
Okay. So I think about connection. I also think about arousal, right? I have to feel excited to see my person. So I I know that there are different types of arousal. Some are instant, some are slow to warm. What is that about? Can you elaborate on that for me?
Uh, Speaking to that, I would say, it reminds me of when people first start dating and then they want to have sex like all the time, like they're just two little bunnies. And then as time goes on, they might like have sex. Sex tends to drop off the longer people are in a relationship.
Mhm.
But what I point out to people is that, sex doesn't just start when you start engaging in whatever you consider to be sex, sexual activity. Like, it's what happens all throughout the day. It's what happens the other 23 hours of the day. And a lot of times when we're talking about the beginnings of a relationship, people might feel like because they have all of these excited, like, novelty, um, I'm so excited to see this person. Usually you're not seeing the person, as you have to schedule time in a different way. And so that often leads to like, oh, I want to connect with you as closely as I possibly can. Um, and like the longing that gets created. So that's why I say that, sex doesn't just, I don't necessarily think it is spontaneous. I think that like there's actually so many things that lead to like someone feeling like they're open and receptive to sex. Now, some people see sex as a way to relieve stress, and then some people will see sex as like, oh, well, I'm so tired, I can't even envision. I feel so overwhelmed, I can't even imagine engaging
Right.
with sex. So it can vary from person to person. Like, so, like when we talk about these ideas of like spontaneous, that's what I mean is that I don't necessarily know that it is spontaneous. I think that there is an assumption that men are just ready to go all the time. And I was like, nah. So I would say, like, to my previous point, that, yeah, there's other factors at play.
Right. And I think we need to be comfortable with understanding that sex between someone is ebbs and flows. Like it's not always going to be on the same because it's like a roller coaster, right? There's a peak moments and then there are moments of downtime. In your experience, how do you distinguish between spontaneous and responsive desire in clients, patients? How do you tailor your approach to them based on the type of therapy and desire that they experience?
Um, what, like, well, to my previous point about like spontaneous, like, I don't necessarily know that it is spontaneous.
Spontaneous.
um, and in terms of response, like there's some people who are not comfortable initiating. They like for their partner to initiate, and then for them, sometimes that's the cue, that, oh, okay, I am open to sex. And for other people, they may not necessarily be in that degree of awareness, and that, or they don't feel necessarily comfortable like trying to initiate sex, so they may not necessarily be aware that they are like, oh, desiring sex, or they're like they waiting for their partner to initiate.
Let's just take a walk back to a previous topic, and I wanted to get clarification from you about what is the difference in sex education and sex therapy?
Yes. The difference between sex education and sex therapy is sex education more informative, as in it's not necessarily getting into like people's individual relationship with sex, so or what may be coming up for them pertaining to sex, or like the things that I've outlined, such as sexuality, gender, or non monogamy. Like sex education would be more about like um, a little bit more about function, a little bit more about like, oh, someone asked you what non monogamy was, and then you tell them what non monogamy is. Now, I also put in as a caveat with that, like when I'm doing sex therapy, that does often include some elements of sex education where needed and appropriate, where certain topics or certain things a client may not be in awareness about, and then I will provide some form of sex education to them.
Talk to me about the one hot topic conversation that you wish you could have with the masses about sex or pleasure. Like if you could just ice break through the world with this one topic, what would it be and why?
I would say variations in relationships. And what I mean by that is that there can be a lot of rigidity in mainstream conversations about how sex should function in relationship. And I would blast the world with like education about that.
So things like, I'm assuming roles and maybe polyamory or things that are embracing your partner's kinks, or how do you navigate dealing with a partner who's unequally yoked in kinks? Let's say they're into something that you aren't willing to navigate. How do you, A, tell them, listen, this is not my thing, or B, how do you allow yourself to at least explore the possibility?
Well, I've worked with couples who've navigated that where they had differences when it came to kink. And, when it comes to situations like that, usually the first barrier is even telling and talking with the partner, someone talking to the partner about what their kink is. And then once they get over that hurdle, then it becomes a conversation about whether or not this partner is open to engaging in this kink with them. And if they're not, them feeling comfortable enough to say in a respectful way, not a shaming way, that that's not something that they feel interested in. But like the jumping off point from there becomes a conversation about whether or not this kink is something that the partner who has the kink, whether or not this is something that they can live without in their sexual life, or if they feel like this is something that's really important to them, that they feel like they either want to continue to explore or that they feel like they want to be able to explore.
Mhm.
If that's the case, then a conversation has to be had about, um, and they feel like they want to explore it, a conversation has to be had about whether or not they feel comfortable to open up the relationship so the partner can explore that. Because not all kinks are necessarily like involve um, what people would conventionally think of as sexual behavior. And so sometimes people also don't want to engage with their kink with their partner because they don't feel attracted to their partner when it comes to that particular kink. What I mean by that is, say, for example, uh, somebody with a kink, like as in they want to be submissive, but in the dynamic with their partner, that doesn't feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable with their partner dominating them, but they do want to be dominated by somebody else. And they might want to be dominated by somebody else by being flogged. They might want to be dominated by somebody else um, by being told what to do all day. That could look like any host of things.
So do you think people are okay with being with their partner on an emotional level, but venturing off and engaging in side quest, to satisfy their kink with other people? Are there consenting couples that agree to this? Like, we are together for emotional support and for having a family, but if you want to engage in a kink, I am okay with you exploring that outside. Is that a thing? Is that something that you think is healthy, or
Um,
think people are okay with being with their partner on an emotional level, but venturing.
yes, it is a thing. And I would also say that there's also a lot of people who are having a loving, fulfilling relationship, loving, fulfilling, emotionally fulfilling, sexually fulfilling. Like they would probably say a good 90% is sexually fulfilling, but they just want to be able to explore a particular kink. Um, that just doesn't fit within the context of that relationship, and whether or not their partner feels comfortable with them being able to explore it. Do I think it's healthy? I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't see, where someone being transparent about a sexual interest and a couple agreeing to that person being allowed to explore that, and then really being explicit about what feels comfortable and what the boundaries are. Like it, yes, it can be something that can function in a good way in a relationship.
Hey, this is a great conversation, Erin. I think you are like a rose in the concrete of Brooklyn. I've never encountered someone in your profession, especially being a Black woman in your role. I just want to touch on that a little bit and delve into demographics, because here at Doral Health and Wellness, we're rooted in, an urban community who most would, you can view us in two ways. You can view us as up and coming and restructuring, or you can view us as an underserved community. But talk to me about the difference in conversations between Black and POC patients that come to you versus people non-Black or POC. Are there nuances in what they're willing to talk about? Are there nuances in where their apprehensions may come from? I just want to understand a little bit more about the demographic that you serve.
Hmm. Yes. When I would say when I'm working with POC or Black clients, oftentimes what I often run into is the Black or POC clients maybe navigating different like cultural aspects and different like religious aspects. So when I say that, I'm thinking about my Caribbean clients, my clients who were raised by Caribbean parents. Um, and they were raised with a certain type of framework when it came to how you are to conduct yourself and how you are to conduct yourself in relationship and towards sex. Um, so a lot of times when I'm working with the BIPOC community, we're talking about more cultural pieces and how that impacts things. We're talking about religion and how religion impacts things, impacts people's relationship to sex, impacts people's relationship to gender, impacts people's relationship to um, relationships.
Guys, Miss Cadet is dropping all of the bombs on us today, all of the knowledge and gems. Drop your questions for her. Let's keep the conversation going. We have to extract all of the info we can out of this woman before she leaves our site. It's going too good. Erin, do you have other things that you want to add to this conversation? I mean, I think that I can't even touch the surface on what you know, and I just want to pick your brain for the next hour, but we have limited time. But drop us a few gems, and something to put in our toolkit to walk away from this conversation.
I know oftentimes in BIPOC community, I'm thinking specifically in Black community, there still can be a lot of reservations and concerns and apprehension about engaging with therapy at all. But there is nothing wrong with needing a safe space to talk through things. There's nothing wrong with needing a place to process things. I think that a lot of conversations are being had out in mainstream society, and people are having a lot of aha moments. When I say aha moments, I'm talking about people having realizations about their sexual identity, people having realizations about their gender, people having realizations about how they function in relationship. And to be able to have a space with a licensed professional where you can talk through those things and figure out what feels right for you is important.
That's right. Oh, the questions are rolling in. Okay, I have a question for you. Someone wanted to know the definition of kinks. What are kinks?
Kinks can very easily, when you get into definition, uh,
They're just niche, I
like
guess.
I guess I want to say niche interest, someone having predilection towards something that induces feelings of arousal or pleasure.
Got it. So examples, just two examples maybe.
Example might be, so I'm trying to be mindful because I'm like I've
We're
seen things, but I will say like sometimes people like I've known, and sometimes I can't remember what the names of them are, but there's cake sitting. Like some people really find arousal through like sitting on cakes. There is uh, things with balloons. Some people are very like stimulated and aroused by like popping balloons.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, I would say some people are very aroused um, by water sports. Water sports is like uh, urinating on a partner or being urinated on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, interesting. Well, there's a broad spectrum, as we know, and we can't spend all of this time, but you're so knowledgeable, and I'm just wondering if you could just share, how people can access you, by which format. Do you do panels? Give us all the information so that people can stay connected with you.
absolutely. So I have a website. It's erincadet.com. You
Mhm.
can email me at erincadet@gmail.com. Um, and yeah, you can find me also on Psychology Today. If you are looking for something specific to sex therapy, you can also find me on a listserv known as Manhattan Alternative. But primarily, I would say my website, erincadet.com, if you want to read more, if you want to learn more about me, and erincadet@gmail.com, should you want to reach out to me. So I have a website. It's erincadet.com.
Mhm.
You can email me at erincadet@gmail.com. Um, and yeah, you can find me also on Psychology Today. If you
Okay, guys, so we are going into the Q&A portion of this. So everyone is hurling questions at me to pick your brain, Erin. So I'm going to fire off at you. And any additional questions you guys have, you can find us on IG at Healthcare Unlock. No ED at the end, just Healthcare Unlock on IG. And you can drop your questions there and engage with us on that platform as well. So, Erin, let's go through this. The first question is, what inspired your work in sex therapy and relationship counseling?
Um, well, going back to, my initial story about my own experience at my OBGYN's office was really what led me and inspired me to um, go down this particular niche. Um, I found it so interesting, and I liked that it wasn't just about like sex as in um, sexual intimacy, but it was about, gender. It was about non-monogamy. It was about sexual orientation.
Okay. Why is it so hard for people, especially couples, to talk openly about sex and pleasure?
Mhm. Well, I think it's because we still live in a very sex negative society, in particular in Western culture. It is still very sex negative, very sex shaming. And, I know a lot of people would disagree with that. But I say that because a lot of what people see, um, when they say, like, oh, sex seems like it's all over the place, I feel like that is in reaction to a sex negative culture.
What are your top tips for starting a difficult or awkward conversation about sex with a partner?
I would say, sometimes, what I would recommend is, it's okay to acknowledge feeling uncomfortable, feeling scared, feeling apprehensive, and that you can start a conversation like that. You can say, hey, something's been on my mind and that I want to talk to you about pertaining to our sexual life, and I've kind of been a little nervous about how you're going to react to it, or I'm a little scared about how you will respond to it. Sometimes that can be a great buffer because what that does is it sends a signal to your partner, like, to respond with a little bit more gentleness, as in, like, they already know that you're scared or you're nervous or you're anxious to broach this topic. So I find that that tends to soften people when it comes to how they react.
Thank you for that. How do boundaries and consent help create more freedom and play and intimacy?
Well, I think boundaries and consent uh, do that, create a greater sense of safety because people know where the limits are. Like, once you know what the parameters are, it allows people to feel freer to play. Um, like, knowing um, that they can say no at any time, um, knowing that they feel comfortable with their partner, that their partner will respect their no, um, knowing that they can say yes to something at any time, um, and that those things are so, like, vital to be able to feel safe in sexual
Can
exploration.
you walk us through a simple focus exercise or mindfulness tip that couples can try at home?
Mhm. Well, how I tend to work is because I kind of moved away from having ready made frameworks for what couples should do because I found that they didn't do them. So I started to really open it up to couples to tell me what they felt like they wanted to engage with. And when I wouldn't necessarily like, I wouldn't lay out, oh, here are 5 things to engage with, but I would, you know if they came to me and they said, we want to have, like, we stopped having sex, then, that becomes an exploration, of course, like, why they stopped having sex. But, like, for some couples, that may be like holding hands again if they stopped holding hands. That may be cuddling. That may be putting the kids to bed and, having dedicated time to talk and connect. Sometimes people will make sure that the kids eat first and then they put them to bed and then they eat dinner.
Mm.
Sometimes it's having dedicated um, date nights.
And what are your go-to resources for people who want to explore this more? Do you have any podcasts? We're in the podcast era. Do you have any books that you like to recommend to help people?
Yes, so one of the ones that I really love is Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are. Not Come As You Are. Actually, it is Come As You Are. I'm sorry, I was thinking about another one. Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are is a great book geared towards AFAB people, or people assigned female at birth, um, that really gets into arousal and like different elements around female sexual pleasure. So that is a big one that I tend to recommend to people when it comes to sexual activity. I think Esther Perel has a lot of exciting things out. She has an amazing podcast. Um, it's called "Where Shall We Begin?"
Okay.
That they have a lot of great. So the podcast is like kind of like these little vignettes of her conversations with couples, like navigating different marital issues or relational issues. But I think that it's a great podcast for couples to listen to, and it really facilitates um, some great conversation.
You're fabulous. I mean, you are just giving me all the gems and all the knowledge, and we're so grateful to have you. I have one last question for you. How do you help the LGBTQI plus community navigate through intimacy challenges and societal pressure?
I think it depends on um, what the individual is coming in to unpack. Um, for some people, this they're for the first time dipping their toe into certain realizations about their sexual orientation. For some people, this is the first time dipping their toe into some realizations that or some inklings that they've been having about their own gender. So, when I think about the community, for some people, it's providing a safe space for them to be able to unpack that, but also to address like where shame may be at play. For some people, it's a significant factor in how they engage with sexuality or whether or not they engage with sexuality. So, really being able to provide a space where people feel comfortable to explore like these different ideas that they are maybe coming to the realization that they have, like it's very important. Sometimes it's also about, um, really working with a clinician who is knowledgeable about this community and the different resources so that they don't feel like they have to explain everything to their therapist, that they working with a therapist that already knows about kink. So like when they're trying to explore issues in their relationship, that they don't have to like do all this explaining about certain activities.
I think I agree with you. I think people like to go somewhere where they feel immediately seen. It really breaks down a barrier and it gets them to just open up to you. So I think that's a really good point you made. Erin, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Healthcare Unlocked. I hope that everyone enjoyed the conversation because you really like unpacked so much in such a short amount of time for us. And now you've opened the door for us to engage in new ways of thinking and, healing and connecting with our partner or just ourselves, because I think a lot of healing starts from within first, right? Big thank you again. I know if this resonated with a lot of you out there, please feel free to like, share, and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Healthcare Unlocked. Remember on IG, it's just Healthcare Unlock, no ED. And remember, your health isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, and yes, even sexual. So, till next time, people, I'm Hope, unlocking real conversations with real people. And we just had the realist, Miss Erin Cadet here. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.